You're watching Capital City Sunday.
Congress is back in session this week. It faces a high priority December 20 deadline to approve a new resolution to fund the government. It is also tasked with passing a disaster relief package and approving a new farm bill that will likely shape the agricultural landscape through 2024 and beyond. Sources have confirmed that House Republican leadership will likely add a one-year extension of the Farm Bill as part of the continuing resolution. The 2018 Farm Bill expired 2 years ago. Critics on both sides of the aisle are now raising concerns that an additional extension would limit farmers already facing challenges. The action would postpone further consideration of its policies and funding measures until 2025, providing temporary relief. But Congress will still need to address the outdated policy framework and its impact on the agricultural industry. Wisconsin Congressman Derek Van Orden, who sits on the House Agriculture Committee, said in an interview with Brownfield Ag News last week that the 2018 bill is flawed. The Republican raising concerns on how failure to pass a new bill before the end of the year would affect dairy farmers in Wisconsin and nationwide. The House Agriculture Committee passed its version of the proposal back in May, with the Senate finishing its version in the weeks following the election. On Tuesday, Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin called on Congress to pass a new 5-year farm bill, urging her colleagues in the Senate to prioritize provisions for clean water and grants to dairy businesses to better support Wisconsin farmers.
We have to have 60 votes to pass a bill, not just a simple majority. And so I think the product that you see here in the Senate side has really the combination of a lot of bipartisan measures and bipartisan initiatives, as opposed to, sadly, what we've seen in the House is a very partisan process to put together their version of the Farm Bill. So I'm hopeful that people will understand that in order to get this across the finish line, we've got to work together.
Joining me now is the Executive Director of Government Relations for the Wisconsin Farm Bureau Federation, Jason Mugnaini. Jason, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Jason, what is the current status of the Farm Bill in both the House and Senate, and what deadlines are approaching for Congress to take action on a new proposal?
Well, the status is that we're not going to get a Farm Bill. There's zero chance that I anticipate that this is going to happen in the lame duck. The House passed their version of the Farm Bill back in May, and unfortunately, the Senate's been sitting on their version up until this past week, where we just got a 1,300-page version of their Farm Bill finally, with timelines expiring. The unfortunate reality is that the deadline, and the scariest deadline specifically for the state of Wisconsin, is fast approaching. There's really only about a week and a half that they have left to act until something that is probably the most challenging piece for a state like Wisconsin, something called the dairy cliff, is fast approaching. The dairy cliff is when the Farm Bill expires, it would go back to something called permanent law, where we would actually be reverting to laws from 1938 and 1949. It would require Congress to maintain dairy prices from 1910. It could cost taxpayers $19 billion a year and make a gallon of milk almost $25. So Congress and the Senate need to act before the first of the year to avoid really what is the end of the dairy industry in Wisconsin.
I want to touch on the dairy industry a little bit more, but before we get to that, are there differences between what we're seeing in the proposal from the House and, as you just stated, this more lengthy proposal from the Senate?
I mean, yeah, there's differences on conservation, on a couple of the titles. There's differences in reference prices. But at this point, we are in such a dire need to have something updated so that we have an economy and programs, crop protection, commodity programs that represent the 2024 economy and not the 2018 economy. Perfect example, the corn and grain markets had a bumper crop this year, one of the biggest crops that we've ever had, and everybody lost money because there's not the types of protections in place. Inputs are way up that really provide for a profitable farm. Those types of programs are updated in our 5-year farm bills, and continuing to do extensions after extensions just perpetuates that problem. There's going to be a need to do some sort of update if we're going to last another year.
You spoke a little bit about dairy farmers, but how is the agricultural industry evolving, and what policies within the current 2018 Farm Bill are raising concerns for farmers here in Wisconsin?
Well, I think it really comes down to the commodity and crop protection programs. And for dairy specifically, the dairy margin coverage program. If we let these things lap, there's no new programs that can come in. There's not reference prices that reflect the economy from today, the costs, the inputs, those types of things. But there's really not going to be an incentive for them to go out and actually fix those programs. What we need to do is, and if there is going to be a short-term fix, and I'm hoping that Congress does this very quickly, is taking those commodity programs and the crop protection programs out of the Farm Bill, passing those here in the lame duck, and then working on the Farm Bill in totality after inauguration and we seat a new government. That's really what is going to need to happen.
Jason, sources have reported, as you said earlier in the conversation, that House Republicans are likely to add a one-year Farm Bill extension to the continuing resolution. The Republican Governors Association wrote a letter to both the House and Senate on Tuesday saying, quote, that any delay would directly impact every community in America. How would another one-year extension differ from a new Farm Bill?
I think certain provisions will see an extension, but I really do think that they're going to take, and this would actually be a benefit, but not the way we would have liked to have seen it done. But if they take the commodity programs and the crop protection, they pass updates to those as part of disaster assistance. And I really believe that this is something that's going to be there's going to be a strong look at that before the first of the year. If they do those, that really will be a benefit. That's kind of a year extension plus. Those other programs will be extended, those nutrition assistance programs will be extended, but Republicans really don't have an incentive to come to the table right now to do some of those things because they're going to be, having the ability with full control of government to get some of those reforms in the nutrition assistance side that they've really been asking for a lot of years.
Jason, if Congress does not pass a new Farm Bill by the end of the year, which we understand it likely will not happen, could the incoming administration impact legislative priorities for next year?
Oh yeah, I mean I assume that a farm bill is not going to pass, but Republicans have had a lot of things that they've wanted to get imported into, reforms into nutrition assistance, different commodity structures, some of the things that we're looking for in terms of modernizing milk programs, especially the Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act. We want to get some of, and the Senate version doesn't have, but we want to get some of those cheese provisions so we can get cheese back into schools in a strong way. We want to see those types of updates, and I think that generally we've seen Republicans be supportive, but on the nutrition assistance side, if there's modifications there, you could potentially lose crossover voters that may vote for a farm bill. But with a majority in both the House and the Senate, and then also controlling the presidency, there's a strong likelihood that that farm bill may potentially look very different than what that farm bill does now. But on the farm programs themselves, we feel confident that if we can get some sort of update here before the first of the year, and then look at the rest of the titles after that, that we might be able to, wade the storm a little bit.
Jason, what could potentially happen if we had to revert back to permanent law?
If we go back to permanent law, the dairy industry in Wisconsin is in a dire situation. I mean, Congress is going to have to potentially buy 15 to 20% of all the milk in the country just to maintain the requirements that they're going to have to under permanent law. And this is something that we know in the ag industry is called the dairy cliff. And if we know that the dairy cliff hits, the dairy industry in America is going to look very different.
Jason Mugnaini, Executive Director of Government Relations for the Wisconsin Farm Bureau Federation. Jason, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.